Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. We have a great show for you today. We'll be covering the Bills taking on the Lions. We'll preview that game. We'll preview the Steelers taking on the Eagles. We'll talk about the Week 15, full NFL Week 15 preview. We'll discuss Postecoglou and his post-match criticism of Timo Werner. And please stick around for the end of the show where I'll be giving you my preview for the NBA Cup semifinals coming up this weekend. Before we start off, if you have a question during the show, we want to hear it. Your input is a big part of what makes this show successful, and we thrive on your energies and insights. Whether it's a quick comment, a thoughtful question, or an opinion you just have to share, please don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. And if you want to make absolutely sure your message stands out and gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that. Just use the super chat button at the bottom of the chat box to send in your super chat. This guarantees that the super chat gets read on the air. And it's also a fantastic way to support our channel. We really rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content you love. We appreciate every bit of it, so go ahead and let us know what you're thinking. Hit that super chat button and let's keep the show as interactive and exciting as possible. And if you prefer, you can always go to the GSMCpodcast.net to tip, donate, or leave a comment or question there. We couldn't do what we do without your amazing support, and we're so thankful to have you as part of our community. We have to start off though with the news that with the big game coming up this weekend, the Buffalo Bills taking on them Detroit Lions, the Wolverines that are the Detroit Lions, in a game that can ultimately have big implications on the number one seed in both brackets. This game can have huge implications, a lot more so with the NFC, with how tight it is at the NFC, with Detroit right now sitting first place. But they have a team on their tails, not only in the Philadelphia Eagles, but also a fellow division rival in the Minnesota Vikings, who are also sitting on their tail as well, with the record of 11-2. With the record of 11-2, so they have two teams sitting on their tails. One is within their own division, so obviously Detroit has competition in the NFC, fierce competition for that number one seed. But Detroit, they've been the hottest team in football. They've won 11 straight games. After that Week 2 loss to Tampa Bay, they haven't lost since then, and it's been absolutely incredible. It's been absolutely incredible what Detroit has been able to do this season. The offense, how explosive they are, how efficient they are in the run game, but at the same time, they have the ability to throw the ball with Jared Goff. Jared Goff is having an hellacious season, absolutely dominant, throwing for 3,265 yards already, 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and 5 of those interceptions came in one game as well. So you take away that one game that he had against the Texans, he only has 5 interceptions this season. 5 interceptions this season. He doubled that just in that game alone. He's been in the MVP race for a reason. Taking on a Buffalo Bills team coming off a disappointing loss to the Los Angeles Rams, but a loss in which they were able to play really, really well offensively. They scored 42 points. 42 points is no easy space to do as an offense. Josh Allen, he's continuing to elevate his MVP case. By the way, I think there's 2 legitimate MVP candidates battling it out this game. So not only does this game have a number one seed implications, I think this game will have potential MVP talk implications going down the line of this ball game. So yeah, I think this is a very, very interesting game. A lot of talent is going to be on that field. We are going to have talent. Number one, we're going to have 2 great offenses. We're going to have 2 opportunistic defenses. I know Buffalo, they had a bad week last week, giving up 44 points in Los Angeles, right? But the Buffalo Bills, defensively, are a pretty good unit. What they've been able to do this season against some decent teams, holding the Niners to 10 points, holding the Chiefs to 21, holding the Colts to 20, holding the Seahawks to 10, holding the Titans to 10, holding the Jets to 20, holding the Texans to 23. Holding the Miami Dolphins earlier on the season to 10 points. They're opportunistic, that defense, and they are due for like they will give up 27 to Miami like they did a couple weeks ago. They will give up 42 to the Rams, 44 in the Rams once in a while, but overall it's a very opportunistic defense, and the great trait that the Buffalo Bills defense has is when they need to make that stop and get off the field, seems like they're able to get it done. Detroit have a great offense and they have a good defense as well, but that's also opportunistic. It seems like Detroit's defense, even if they've been getting gashed through a period in that game, anytime they need to make that one play, get that one stop to seal the deal, they're able to make it. It reminds me exactly of what the 49ers defense is not. When the time is needed to make that play to close out the game, you can make it. That's what the 49ers defense has been. That's exactly opposite to Aaron Glenn and what he's done this season. They've lost key players here and there. They lost their main man in Aiden Hutchinson, but the defensive intensity, the defensive prowess has remained the same. And when you can lose players to injuries, I think, and still hold your own on that end, I think that has as much, I think the depth of the team has as much responsibility as the coaching in that. I don't think it's just the depth. When you're losing key guys and you're still able to maintain a high level, I don't think you could put it all to, the team just has depth. No, I think the team has a great coaching when you can go through injuries and when you can go through adversities. And not just great coaching, but great leadership to be able to manage those situations. And that's exactly what the Detroit Lions have been doing this season. And look, realistically now, Buffalo, with that loss to the Rams, it's going to be difficult for them to, they have the tiebreaker over the Chiefs, but they'll need Chiefs to drop. The Bills will need to win of their next 4, and they'll need Chiefs to drop 2 of these 4 games. And and they play the Browns. They play the Browns this week at the Dog Pound, so that could be difficult. Then they go away to the Texans. Can't see them losing any of those 2 games, quite frankly. And then they play the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road, and then they play the Denver Broncos on the road. That's the possibility, if you're a Buffalo Bills fan, those 2, for number 1, for Buffalo to have any chance to get the for Buffalo to win the number 1, for Buffalo to have any chance to get the 1 seed, the Chiefs have to lose 2 games. They go 3 of their next 4, they clinch that number 1 spot. That is guaranteed. But if they do lose 2 of these 4, it gives Buffalo to be in a position where they win out and they're it. If Kansas City drops 3 of their next 4, then Buffalo has a leeway to lose a game and still be the number 1 seed. But again, the Kansas City Chiefs are not going to drop 3 of their last 4. They're not going to drop 3 against the Browns, Texans, Steelers, and Broncos. As good as we believe the last 2 teams are, 3 out of 4, and that scenario is not realistic. So, obviously, I think there's more implications for Detroit in this one in terms of battling for the number 1 seed. But for Buffalo, you just want to get back on the right side of momentum. You don't want to drop down. They were really sitting pretty at 10-2. You don't want to suddenly be looking at yourselves as 10-4, and 10-4 is almost wild card fringe position, damn near. You don't want to be in that. You don't want to be in that area. You want to be they've already won the division, obviously, but I'm just basing on how the record sounds. 10-4 sounds like a fringe wild card team, or it sounds like a wild card team, not a fringe wild card team. But they've already wrapped up the division, all that. That's out of the way. But still, overall, it's just. But as I was saying, discussing this game between Buffalo and Kansas City, Buffalo and Detroit, I think the offense that generates more explosive plays, more plays down the field, and has better control of the line of scrimmage. Can they get their run game going against this Detroit Lions team? Can they dominate this? They dominate the trenches. Can Josh Allen have an impact using his legs? As far as the Kansas City Chiefs, how do they maintain solid long drives against this Buffalo Bills? I mean, not Kansas City Chiefs. I keep saying Kansas City Chiefs. Detroit Lions. How can they manage to sustain long drives against this Buffalo Bills defense? Do they go with the run-heavy offense and try to, play the game through, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery? I'm very interested in both teams and how they go about it and their tactics entering the game. But obviously, we really won't know their X's and O's till, we watch the game. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we will do a preview of the Eagles taking on the Steelers.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Before the break, we did a preview of the Bills taking on the Lions. We move on to do a Steelers versus Eagles preview in this one. So the Pittsburgh Steelers are taking on the Philadelphia Eagles, in which I will call, which I'm gonna label as in the theme, in the spirit of English football, or English soccer. I'm gonna call it the Pittsburgh Derby, the Pittsburgh rivalry, the Pittsburgh showdown. Let's use a more college football term. Not the Red River Showdown. The Pittsburgh Classic Showdown. I meant to say the Pennsylvania Derby. The Pennsylvania Classic Showdown. As two Pennsylvanian teams take on each other. The Pittsburgh Steelers, the blue-collar working city Pittsburgh, take on the major metropolis city in Pennsylvania, the city that's considered, historical for some of the importance in American history that's connected to Philadelphia. We know the Liberty Bell. The Great Liberty Bell is in Philadelphia. They have it has huge. It's a huge. It's a huge part of it. Their history, the American history. But going back to football, Russell Wilson and Seattle Seahawks, Pittsburgh Steelers entered the scheme in a great position to win the division right now, sitting at 10-3 in the AFC, while the Eagles are trying to, are hoping that Detroit slips up here and there with the end of the season, and Eagles can, sneak their way past them as the number one seed, because they're applying pressure. Eagles, they've gone on this 9-game winning streak, but the only problem is Detroit is on an 11-game winning streak, and they've They've been trying to apply the pressure Philadelphia Eagles, but they haven't been able to quite reach them as of right now. But as far as this game, Steelers. By the way, Steelers, they're on a stretch of games now. I was talking about how they have a really good outfit to win a really good outlook to win the AFC North. But you look at their schedule. Their schedule is ridiculously hard. You take on the Eagles, the Ravens, who, the Steelers could wrap up the division with that one. The Chiefs, and then you take on the Bengals, which you don't know what you get any given Sunday. That's a week 18, so that'll be Cincinnati's last chance to give it all on the field before another set of offseason headlines and all that, with them not paid players and all that. Pittsburgh has a stretch of games there, and they could drop some games. Will they drop enough games where that the Ravens will catch them in the North? I don't know. It depends. It does depend on tiebreakers. If Ravens do beat the Steelers next week, it completely changes the door in that AFC because, now the Ravens are only, the Ravens will only be essentially one game behind, they'll only be one game behind the Steelers depending on what happens in this week. So, but as I was saying, Saquon Barkley, this Pittsburgh Steelers defense is overall a really good defense. They're really, really good defensively. Really strong secondary and just an overall powerhouse of a unit. But as far as a unit in terms of team stats, defending wise, they're the fourth worst defense in the league in terms of rushing. With how they've allowed 1190 yards this season, it was 291 attempts. According to NFL.com, they have them ranked as one of the worst rushing defenses in the league. That is wild when you consider the fact that when you consider the fact how great that defense is, and also Saquon Barkley's coming into town, who already has 1,600 yards and is looking to continue to add more yards to himself, continue to build his MVP case, to continue to get the Eagles, staying in amongst this winning streak. The Eagles, they've been under a little bit of controversy as well with the A.J. Brown, Jalen Green stuff. Then Brandon Graham came out talking about their relationship on the radio show, all that. It's just been a lot of noise with Philadelphia, and a great offensive performance here where they can get the ball to Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown in space a numerous amount of times, and they can both go for 100 yards. I think a game like that will really unite anything going on within this team. The only problem is that will happen over a dead body. Mike Tomlin will allow that to happen. Will never allow that to happen over his dead body. It'll never, ever happen. Ever. Number one, the secondary is crazy elite, led by Minka Fitzpatrick and co. So to act like you're going to be able to dominate them, pushing the ball down the field, is also pretty irresponsible. I don't believe that the Eagles defense is just gonna, or the Steelers defense is just gonna allow A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith to be one-on-one. They're gonna do a lot of good mix and matching, and trying to, make it difficult for Jalen Hurts to read the coverage. Think what happens is in certain times, and we saw it a little bit in the Ravens game, when the Eagles rushing attack gets a little stagnant and they're struggling to move the ball, they start getting a little bit too shotgun happy and become a drop back passing team, and it leads to show the vulnerabilities of Philadelphia because, they're not a drop back passing team. In fact, when Saquon, he's had a really, really, really good year, but in the last couple of games, it's been decent, 107, 124. Not what we, what he's done this season, he's consistently in the in the high marks. But in the game, especially in that Baltimore game, when the Niners or when the Eagles were really struggling to get that run game going, what they went. They started becoming a little bit more of a drop back team, and the offense didn't flow. And I think Pittsburgh is going to be able to expose that weakness. As far as Pittsburgh defensively going up against Philadelphia, look, now is the time you gotta get Mike Wilton in and getting the reps this week, because you're kind of need somebody going up against this team to push the ball down the field. This defense. The secondary now brought in Kuptagine. Yeah, they're a really good secondary, but they're a really good secondary. But you get a good guy like George Pickens in space, one-on-one. I'd give him the opportunity to make the 50-50 catch. I don't trust the talent of look, what Eagles can do really, really well on both sides is they can control the line of scrimmage. I go back to the Eagles game when they took on what was it? When they took on Baltimore, yes. They dominated on the defensive line. They really made it hard for Lamar Jackson to find the running lanes, and and they limited him in what he was doing outside the pocket. They were running, they were athletic. But against the and then the great thing about that, as long as that, the offensive line was also holding their own against the Baltimore Ravens pass rush. So, I think Philadelphia, the physicality and the culture that they have, the most important aspect to the team is how they can control the line of scrimmage. That is non-negotiable for a Philadelphia Eagle team. You have to be able to control both the line of scrimmages on offense and defense. And the Pittsburgh Steelers have done a good job emphasizing that. Or the Philadelphia Eagles have done a good job emphasizing that. By the way, Jalen Carter, that's a player. That's a player we should all be on the lookout. If you're not on the lookout for him, phenomenal player, what he's doing at 23. And I was a little reluctant on him because last season I didn't hear much about him. Or I heard a lot, but it was wolf talk. This season, from what I've seen, he's dominated. The resurgence also, Bryce Huff. I remember after the first couple of games, they were talking about, I think it was after that Falcons game, they were talking about, Bryce Huff being considered they should let him go right there. And, that still may be the case, but, that's still maybe the case, but I think Bryce Huff has done a good job to respond from the criticism he faced that week, I have to say. Speaking of Huff, he did have to have surgery and miss some time. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we will discuss, we'll do a full NFL Week 15 preview.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
before the break, we did a preview on the Steelers taking the Eagles. We move on to discuss NFL Week 15. So the NFL Week 15 will continue this Sunday. The Niners took on the Rams Thursday night in a touchdown-less snooze fest, and the Rams ended up on top, essentially ending the 49ers season. And the 49ers season unbelievably underwhelming this season, heartbreaking. Commanders take on the Saints. So Commanders, they want to bye this past week. Now, they have a chance. They want to pull away in terms of getting that division, in terms of getting that final wild card spot. I feel like the other two wild card spots are more likely than not locked in with the Packers and the Vikings. That third wild card spot, belongs to the Commanders right now. But that second place team in the NFC West, the team that doesn't win that division, will be on their tail. Right now, it is the Rams who are sitting in second place at 8-6, and will potentially drop. The crazy thing is the Packers game on Sunday night. That's a really, really big one, because the Seahawks win that game. Seahawks are jumping the Packers in terms of record and tiebreaker as well. They have the tiebreaker over the Packers. So even if the Seahawks were to, let's say Seahawks were to win, but then they lose some games coming down the stretch and don't end up winning that division, well, they'll still have the tiebreaker over the Packers, which can make it really mucky when we talk about ranking potential wildcard teams. But yeah, as of right now, the Commanders, they have the inside shot to get that last NFC wildcard spot, right? But yeah, don't count out, whoever finishes second place in the NFC West. I do think the Seahawks are probably gonna miss the playoffs. I think they will drop the games. They will drop the Packers game. They will drop the Vikings, and then the momentum from those two losses, I think, they'll probably beat the Bears, and then they'll lose to the Rams, and I think they'll go 1-3, and I don't think that'll be enough to save their season at 9-8. So, but yeah, it's always interesting to do these. I feel like Steve Kornacki, by the way, it's that time of, well, it's been that time of year for a while when elections started a while ago. Elections are now over, but now it's time for Steve Kornacki to, give us his NFL playoff odds. I'm looking forward to seeing his segments later on. The Chiefs take on the Browns. Look, I think the Browns will do more than a good enough job to be able to stay competitive in this game. They've, under Jameis Winston, against the really, really good teams, despite them only having 3 wins this season, they've been competitive. They played some good football. Jameis Winston has played some good football. He's also turned it over. Definition of Jameis Winston. Here's the thing with Kansas City. Jameis Winston, I think he'll have a good game, but that one turnover that gives the Chiefs an extra possession will probably be enough for the Chiefs to win that game, because Chiefs take advantage of this, the tight margins and the differences between the team. It's what Kansas City has done for a very, very long time. That's why they've won the amount of Super Bowls that they have. So, yeah, obviously I'm favoring the Chiefs. Favor the Commanders over the Saints as well. Bengals, Titans. Look, the Bengals, they're living in this mathematically alive reality, but they're not really, let's be for real. There's no way they're catching up to Denver or. But, yeah, Bengals, they do take on the Tennessee Titans, and for all I say, they're favorites. Miami take on the Houston Texans. Miami, they want to make a late season push as well. They lost their last game, which severely, or not their last game, but they lost that Packers game, which severely hampered their chances. But they're still in that 6-7 mix. That's right where the Colts are. So if the Colts have a chance to make it, then I'd say the Dolphins do too. The only difference is the Colts have an opportunity to get a direct shot at the Denver Broncos and hand them a loss, and that loss could be so big if they're able to hand them that loss that they'll have the tiebreaker over them. So really be like a two game win. So don't count that out. I'm interested for that. Ravens take on the Giants. Baltimore Ravens taking on the New York Giants. Actually, before this Philadelphia Eagles game, the last time Lamar Jackson has lost to a team in the NFC, in the NFC period was the Giants. It was the year that the Giants made the divisional round. I believe that was what, 2021 year? Or 2021, 2020 year. I think it's 2020, 2021, right? Whatever it was. That was a great playoff game, by the way, that year that the Giants won when they played the Vikings. But that's a little off topic. Jets take on the Jaguars, two teams that are eliminated. You know, I'll favor the Jets, though, because they have Aaron Rodgers, while Jaguars don't have a quarterback. Cowboys taking on Carolina. You know, I think this is a good shot for Bryce Young to get on the big stages. You know, going up against the Dallas Cowboys, there'll still be a lot of people watching, even if it's not nationally televised, which I'm expecting it not to be. You never know. You know, they'll do whatever they can to get the Cowboys on, but I'm expecting it not to be national, not to be completely national televised. But it could well be, and it's good. It's a good opportunity for Bryce Young to continue to show what he's doing to a bigger audience, and hopefully, the pressure in that situation doesn't get to him. Buccaneers taking on the Chargers. That one is a really, really good one between two, more or less even teams. Both teams battling for something really important. Chargers, they're trying to make the playoffs. Buccaneers, they're trying to win the division. I'm looking forward to that because I think both teams have huge stakes in this one, and Buccaneers, they have the ability to play with the best in the NFC. Right now they've been a little banged up, but I still believe they have some quality. Colts taking on the Denver Broncos. That's the biggest game of this week. Playoff lines on the line. Right now, Broncos sitting 8-5. Realistically, Colts need to catch up to them to make the playoffs. Colts are sitting 6-7. So there's a 2-game difference. But this game is almost acts as if it's a double game because winner also ends up getting the tiebreaker here. So if the Colts can win this game, set their record to 7-7, change the Broncos record to 8 and whatever the number is. I'm having technical difficulties. Give me 1 second. But yeah, as I was saying, if the Colts can, win this game and set their record to 7-7, and then that will drop the Broncos down to 8-6. Well, it makes it really, really interesting coming down to the wire because they only need to match their record to finish ahead of them because of that tiebreaker. And the Broncos still have the Chargers and Chiefs yet to play, while the Colts have a easier route taking on the Titans, the Giants, and the Jaguars. Like, I'm telling you, Colts are more than alive to snatch this wild card spot from Denver, and I can very much see it happening. But it starts from the game. This game, utter importance, and that's why I am saying this is realistically, this game really should be flexed. But they're not gonna do that. Actually, Packers Seahawks, it shouldn't be flexed. No, it shouldn't. But it's still a great game. Patriots taking on the Cardinals. The Cardinals, they're just slipping out, kind of like the Niners. They're now 6-7. They win it, they can make it interesting. They'll fall. They'll only be a game behind the Rams, and then there'll be a game and a half behind the Seahawks. It depends really what happens with the Seahawks-Packers game. So, yeah, the Cardinals, they want to stay alive and, beat a Patriots team. Bills taking on the Lions, we talked about that. Steelers taking on the Eagles, we talked about that. Packers taking on the Seahawks. Again, as I was saying, big implications for Seattle in this one. You extend your division lead at the top if you win it. If not, you give the Rams, the Rams will be in the lead because the Rams have the tiebreaker over Seattle. And Seattle, they've been on a great momentum. They're on a 4-game winning streak ever since they won that game against the 49ers. It's just completely changed both teams' season, even though the Niners were struggling at that point. But now they're taking on Green Bay. This is some real opposition for the first time in a while, and I see Seahawks folding in this one. I think Packers get the win. Bears taking on the Vikings. Vikings, they'll get it done. This Bears team is just a mess. And then the Falcons take on the Raiders. Yeah, the Falcons, they have to win this one as well. They're falling apart. We need to see a good performance, Kirk Cousins, to, if you're a Falcons fan and, you need some sort of, good signs coming from him, and we haven't seen that. He's thrown for 7 interceptions in his last 3 games. Not a single touchdown. Not a single touchdown. 8 interceptions. I'm sorry. He scored 8. He's thrown 8 interceptions in his last 4 games with 0 touchdowns. 0 touchdowns. That's terrible. That's terrible. So yeah, that will be an issue. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we will discuss Postecoglou on Twitter.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Before the break, we discussed we did a full NFL Week 15 preview. We move on to discuss Ange Postecoglou. So Postecoglou came out with some criticisms of Timo Werner after the game against the Rangers. Tottenham 1-1 draw against Rangers. And if it wasn't for a late save by Forster, it could have been a Rangers win in this one. And Tottenham, they've been struggling of late. Obviously going up at Ibrox is never an easy play to play, especially in Europe. And yeah, it's not quite the Champions League, but the Europa League is very, very passionate. And also, by the way, that's a bad result for Tottenham, because now Tottenham suddenly drop out of the top 8. And obviously, you don't want to be playing extra Europa League games that are just flat out unnecessary. Even in this one, we see Tottenham, they're reluctant to put out, their star players on a game in game now basis Europa League. They had Son in this one. By the way, Son, a lot of people are going to talk about, Timo Werner, that Son has been struggling all season. And a lot of Tottenham fans have, besides Kulusevski, who's just been that shining star, bright star for them since he's got there. Everyone else has been pretty disappointing and hasn't lived up, in my opinion. But I love the fact that I thought Bissouma played really well in this one, though. I do. I thought Bissouma played really, really well. Him and Bentancur, I thought they held it down. I think both players have, really good ability. But going back to what I was saying, so Postecoglou, he came out after the game, or he ended up subbing out, Timo Werner at halftime, which is, as we say, it's a bad. That's a bad moment. That's a moment he's probably not going to forget in his career. Timo Werner getting subbed off at halftime. It's just not normal. It's just not normal, But what is even more not normal is, selling out your player in the press conference. Criticizing him, essentially saying he's not good. He's not good enough. He says, after the game, he said, Werner's first half performance for Spurs was not acceptable. My thing is, you extended Timo Werner's loan. What do you expect from him? You thought it was going to be sunshine and rainbows from minute one and game in, game out? I mean, that has to be more delusional than Arsenal and Arsenal fans with expecting Kai Havertz to be some sort of savior at the number 9 position. Like, give me a break. Yeah, Timo Werner had a strength of being able to play with his pace, stretch the back line, time runs and all that. But he's not technically good enough to drop in midfield and spring out of passes, right? he's not that technically gifted in tight spaces, and you can get him the ball in the tight spaces, and the ball could not stick. He just had pace, and he knew how to take advantage of the space when it came, and he's a really good job of being at the right place at the right time, because he seems like he's had proper number 9 training going up the ranks, but yeah, he's just not good enough. Again, I don't like what Postecoglou says, as a manager, forget football coaches, but as a manager of a corporation, let's say the manager of a Starbucks, you don't publicly shame your employees, your fellow colleagues. You don't do that. He is, and I don't know if he went to Starbucks or people are just assuming and all that, but yeah, it's just Timo Werner is I still don't understand. I still don't understand what Postecoglou thought was gonna happen. Was he thinking it was gonna be rainbows? Was Timo Werner's game in, game out? Did he not see him at Chelsea even last season? He didn't light up the world at Tottenham. I mean, at Tottenham last season, But overall, Postecoglou, he can't say that. You can't say that. You can't say that. You keep that in private. You have a one-on-one talk with him. You tell him it is unacceptable. As far as Tottenham, man, Tottenham is a perfect example of football style and football appeal doesn't equate results. A lot of people will, blame Arsenal in terms of criticize them for the way they play, especially non-Arsenal fans and all that. And yes, maybe it's a bad time to make this point because they're 6 points off Liverpool, with Liverpool having played a game less. But Tottenham are the perfect example of why, style of playing doesn't mean crap. If it's based on style of play and appeal of football and all that, Tottenham should be sitting maybe first in the league, probably second, slightly maybe behind Chelsea. But Tottenham, Chelsea, those are the two teams that play more appealing football in the Premier League. The rest, Liverpool, they pick and choose their moments where they really want to go after it in games. Arsenal, they've been peak, take advantage of moments sort of team. Manchester City, yeah, I'm not a fan of just watching City in general. Yeah, they dominate games, but it's through slow, methodic possession. But look, they're in a really, really bad form right now. Tottenham, they're able to play these great games in general, but through one slip up defensively because of the high line that they have, the ridiculously high line, or just not being clinical enough in the final third. Suddenly they're, finishing the game with 65-70% possession with double the amount of shots than the other team, and they're 2-0 losers because of goals that came against the run of play. They have to figure out a way to be more clinical, right? And they cannot be as open as they are defensively. They're way, way too open defensively. And yeah, they need to build this consistency going forward. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we will do a preview of the NBA Cup semifinals. before the break, we discussed Postecoglou and his post-match criticism of Timo Werner. We move on to discuss the two NBA Cup semifinals coming up this Saturday. The first of the two is the Eastern Conference. The Atlanta Hawks take on the Milwaukee Bucks. Atlanta Hawks, they do a good job of these one-off games really showing up. And Trae Young, in these one-off games, you saw a few seasons ago, they were able to knock off the Heat in the play-in. And they do a good job in these one-off games. They're able to get a couple games off the reigning, the team that went on to get the defending champs in Boston. They have the ability with Trae Young and Cole to get one big win here and there, and they do it in a really good fashion. And they're managed by Quinn Snyder, an excellent coach, and they got some guys playing really, really good ball. Trae Young, he's averaging 21, 12 and 3, or 21, 12 and 4. They have the number 1 overall pick, Zachary Resasher, who, by the way, is might be the most under the radar number 1 pick. Not really dominating, lighting it up 11.2, and the pressure is not really on him because there's not much that people expect. A lot of people thought Sarr for the longest time was going to be the number 1 overall pick, but his draft value slowly started to deteriorate. He's been okay this season as well, 10.7 points on 39% field goal, But yeah, this is a Hawks team that's trying to build something, and what they can do, having the scoring ability of Bogdanovic, the presence of Capella, to push to run the floor, and his defensive prowess. Also having a big in Jalen Johnson, who's averaging damn near 20 points a game. Great, not a big, having a wing / small forward like Jalen Johnson, a player like DeAndre Hunter that can just fit different roles, Onyeka Okongwu as well, the defensive presence he provides. Look, Hawks have a lot of really solid pieces. They don't really have much game changers besides Trae Young, but they have solid pieces, and they could give the Bucks an issue. As far as the Bucks, look, the Bucks started the season horrendously, but slowly they're starting to pick themselves up. The Bucks have, and they got Chris Middleton back recently. Who that's not why they got him back really recently, so that's not really why they've been able to pick it up. But he's a player. He's only averaging 7.3 points a game. He's as a Bucks fan, you're hoping that he can get some of his form back, because he hasn't been playing. He hasn't played really in a long time. He hasn't played a consistent stretch of basketball in an extremely long time. But going back to what I was saying, though, the Bucks, they really were struggling early this season, but they've been able to turn around, and now in the last couple of games or so, they won that Magic game. They're 13-11. They were in a really bad position starting off the season, I have to say. They were in a really, really low spot, and they were able to dig themselves out. And not only dig themselves out, they find themselves in an NBA Cup semifinal in Vegas. I think I don't know where to go. I think it's damn near 50-50. Here, this next one I think is more clear. I think OKC are the favorites. They have, they're building the experience. They're just more talented. They're what Houston is trying to become. OKC is. Houston, OKC, what OKC is what Houston is trying to develop into being, with these young stars, with the pedigree, the defensive pedigree, but also having a combination of a bunch of players that can dominate games, not needing, that 3. Okay, I grew up in the era where, you needed two more, you needed at least 2, most likely 3 superstars to compete no matter what. So you talk about LeBron, Kyrie, Kevin Love, LeBron, D-Wade, Chris Bosh, Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce. The trio was the new way of looking at things. I think we're starting to shift away from the trio being the most important, and shifting into a point in the NBA where a combination of defense and depth is what can really have a big impact going forward. And overall, as I was saying though, the similar teams, but kind of favor OKC in that one, most definitely. Thank you guys for tuning into the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. Thank you once again. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Let's go.